Hello, my delicious co-creators. Lilu here. I'm in Munich, in Germany, with Dr. Joe Dispenza. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Lulu. Happy to be with you.
Same here. I'm excited to speak about your new book. You know, I've been watching how your work has progressed over the years. We met in 2011. I came to visit you in your home. Is it in Washington State, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And we had a great conversation, very inspiring. You've inspired millions, thousands and millions of people by now. And this book, You Are the Placebo, is so cool. I just really enjoyed reading your story. And I find it super interesting. And what I love about you, of course, is that you explain in such a beautiful way what science is really showing us. But on a quantum level, right? And there is this. I want to do this video is going to be in two parts because I'm super excited to interview you. So this is going to be a bit longer than the usual interview, even if you're completely jet lagged, probably.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready.
You're ready. I love that about you. And so I was suggesting that we do this first part on more understanding the law of attraction from this quantum perspective. And then the second part on really, and this is all about the placebo effect, but the second part more on healing your body. We'll get into the genes and demystifying the DNA and all this great juicy things. But first, you know, when I stepped in Joe's home, like back in Washington State several years ago, I was really, it was like stepping in somebody's dream. Like I really get that you master some kind of law of manifestation. Like I felt like I was stepping in somebody's present that was really like vivid and colorful and very real. And, you know, tell us how you view this, because, you know, way back then, several years ago, I guess it's 2006, there was The Secret, the documentary, a lot of talk have been happening around the law of attraction. But how do you see the whole law of attraction from this quantum perspective? And how can we really step in this amazing future?
Well, I think that's the question everybody wants to know. I think it's a time in history where it's not enough to know. It's a time in history to know how. And if you think about it, most people live their life in a habit. They think the same thoughts, they perform the same actions, they live by the same emotions, but they secretly expect their life to change. But how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So if you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before, the same thoughts always lead to the same choices. The same choices always lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences, and the same experiences produce the same emotions. And those same emotions then drive your very same thoughts. And so you get caught in this kind of biological, neurological, and quantum fixated pattern. So then the hardest part about change, really, in creating the life that you want, being defined by a vision of the future instead of a memory of the past, is not making the same choices you did the day before. And the moment you do that, you step into the unknown. Now, you and I have been conditioned and hypnotized into believing that the unknown is some scary place. But when you begin to realize the unknown is the perfect place to create from, that void of unpredictability, that uncertainty, that unfamiliarity, is really the quantum place of uncertainty where all manifestations come from. So when you and I become comfortable living in that unknown place, I think then that we begin to manifest the things we want in our lives. So for me personally, I want to execute and be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past. So most people's brains are organized to reflect everything they know in their life. Their brain is a record of the past. And if you feel the same way every single day, and feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences, it means, number one, nothing new is happening in your life. And number two, those emotions are keeping you anchored to the past. If thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body, and how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, most people are literally, biologically, neurologically, chemically, genetically, and even quantum-wise connected to a past. So then the question is, the fundamental question is, can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the experience has already occurred. Now, the latest research in neuroscience and neuroplasticity tells us we can change our brain to look like the event has already occurred. And can we begin to emotionally embrace a future reality that's a potential in the quantum field and begin to emotionally embrace it to such a degree that we fall in love with that future reality, that our body as our unconscious mind begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment, and we're signaling new genes and new ways to change our body to look like the experience has already occurred in preparation for the event. Now, think about this.
So making our inner world more real than the outer world.
Right, but not only that, you have to then understand that when you truly do this properly, you're not waiting for your healing to feel whole. You're not waiting for your success to feel empowered. You're not waiting for your wealth to feel abundant. You're not waiting for your new relationship to feel love. You're not waiting for the mystical moment to feel awe. That's the old model of reality, of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you. And when you feel better inside, then you pay attention to whatever caused that. That's cause and effect. And when you begin to make the correlation between what changed you from outside and inside, you create an associative memory. The quantum model of reality begins to say then you have to teach your body emotionally how that future is going to feel like before it's made manifest. In other words, you have to feel awe in order for the mystical moment to happen. You have to feel abundance before your wealth can occur. You have to feel in love with life before your new relationship happens. And so we're not defining reality by our senses because we're not waiting then for anything outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. So if there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the experience has already occurred, physical evidence, because the epigenetic model of reality says you can change your body by thought alone, and neuroplasticity says you can change your brain by thought alone. So if there's physical evidence to look like the experience has already occurred, well, relax, because the experience is going to find you. And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Because
it takes time at first. You know, later on in the second part, we'll speak about how you healed your own body at a young age, and then how now you're teaching it in your workshops. But before, and you get that click. I read like after 6 weeks. But when does that click happen? At first, like it's very, it's not as The
challenge is then to every day be defined by a vision of the future. So then, when you combine a clear intention, that's a thoughtful process, with an elevated emotion, a heartfelt state of being, thoughts are the language of the brain, feelings are the language of the body. When you truly do that, your brain and body are living in the future instead of living in the past. And you're going to be drawn to some new event, because thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. So here's the question then. The fundamental question is, it's going to take time to pull your brain and body out of the past and continuously invest your energy into the future. So can you then maintain that vision, that view of your future, independent of the conditions in your environment, independent of the emotional addictions or conditionings or habits of the body, and independent of time? Because if you can, that's what greatness is all about. That's when we begin to truly change. And people around the world are doing this consistently, and they're doing it really well because it's our natural, innate way of being. We are creators.
Yeah. And this whole, what is the link between this self-sabotage and the genes? Like, how, or in epigenetics, because I've been doing some sessions now, it exists like, do an epigenetic session where all of a sudden you look at a stress that is hidden and you give another message to your brain, and here you're entering this new future. So there seems to be like some real work that needs to be done also to get there, no?
Yeah, it requires consistent action. Why? Because meditation, the actual translation of the word meditation, means to become familiar with. So the first thing you have to do is you have to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. You got to notice your automatic habits and behaviors. And you have to become aware of your emotions that keep you anchored to the past. And if you can become so conscious of the unconscious states of mind and body that they would never slip by your conscious awareness again, you're becoming familiar with the old self so you don't return. Then if you begin to think about new ways of being defined by a vision, plan your behaviors, review them in your mind. Now, if you keep doing that over and over again, nerve cells that fire together wire together. You begin to become familiar with a new state of mind. At the same time, if you can emotionally cultivate your inspiration, your joy, your enthusiasm ahead of the experience, by repeating that over and over again, cultivating that state, it's going to begin to become familiar to you. So then the process of change then requires unlearning and relearning, breaking the habit of the old self, reinventing a new self. Pruning synaptic connections, as we say in neuroscience, and sprouting new connections. Unmemorizing emotions that are stored in the body. Then, here's the key, reconditioning the body to a new mind and to a new emotion. It's literally moving from your past to your future. It's losing your mind and creating a new one. And so then when you begin to understand that in that process, it's going to feel a little bit unfamiliar, uncomfortable. And if you can relax into that, instead of going back to the past, continuously invest in your future, sooner or later, it'll begin to become easier and easier and easier. And all of a sudden, when you least expect it, something amazing is going to happen in your life. And when that event begins to occur, you're going to pay attention to what you did inside of you now to produce the effect outside of you. And that's called human empowerment. And there isn't a person in the world that's excluded from this equation.
We're talking here, this is part of what you describe here. It's more geared towards the body and the healing, but you're talking about that we are this placebo. But does this mean, and here we're going to talk about how our own body can create really is a whole pharmacy of its own. So how does that work in the material world? Are we accessing some kind of those dreams are already inside of us, or are we tapping into, are we creating those? Like, is it already there, or are we bringing them into our reality?
Well, the answer is both. I mean, in a sense, we come preloaded with all the biological and neurological machinery to do this. And it's essential to understand that we have quantum physics, we have neuroscience, we have neuroendocrinology, we have psychoneuroimmunology, we have epigenetics. All of those scientific models are pointing the finger at possibility and how the mind and body are totally related. In other words, mind and matter, mind and body were always separate entities until the birth of quantum physics. Psychoneuroimmunology says there's never a time that the mind isn't influencing the body, and there isn't a time when the body isn't influencing the mind, that we are always in a state of being. So then, if you're living by the same thoughts, behaviors, and emotions every single day, then your biology is going to stay exactly the same. So then the question is, if you can begin to then change the way you think, change the way you act, and change the way you feel every single day, and be consistent with it and not return back to the old mechanisms, in time then you'll see a steady, gradual change. Now, it's easier said than done, but when you understand how much potential we have as human beings, and you begin to understand the science of the placebo, I mean, think about it. How can you give someone a sugar pill, a saline injection, perform some false surgery or procedure, and a certain percentage of those people will accept, believe, and surrender without any analysis to the thought that they're getting the real substance or treatment. And they begin to program their autonomic nervous system to make their own pharmacy of chemicals that matches the exact chemical that they think they're taking. So is it the inert substance that's doing the healing, or is it the body's innate capacity to heal? So then, if you understand the science of how the placebo works, couldn't you then teach it? And instead of putting your belief in something outside of you, could you put your belief in something inside of you or some potential in the quantum field, some unknown instead of a known, and keep revisiting that unknown until you make it known. And when you finally make it known, then you will begin to manifest the change in energy, the change in chemistry, the change in biology, the change in circuitry, the change in genetic expression as a result of your own volition. So then, here's an example. In a depression study where they do placebo studies, 81% of those people that are in a depression study that are given a placebo, 81% of them get better from depression by taking the placebo. Many of them think they're given the real substance, and when the placebo is revealed, they say to their doctor or the researcher, "No, I think you made a mistake. I got the real drug." And they say, no, you have just the placebo. Even though your brain scans show that you're better. In other words, it's not just in their mind, it's in their brain. So what does that mean? It means they're making their own pharmacy of antidepressants, the exact chemical that they need to get better. It's innately within us. So then there's blends of chemicals and changes in chemicals that begin to affect our body dramatically. 10 minutes of gratitude a day begins to release a chemical called immunoglobulin A, the primary defense against bacteria and viruses in the body.
Yeah, and this is good too for manifesting. Like here we're talking a bit more body, and we'll get more a little bit later, but this is applicable to manifesting our dreams, right? In this reality. It's the same thing, right?
It's the exact same thing. It's just where you place your attention.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about manifesting your dreams, well, it only requires two things.
Yeah.
It requires a clear intention. An intention is a vision, a possibility. The moment you say, what would it be like to be healthy? What would it be like to be wealthy? What would it be like to have a new home? What would it be like to have a great job? And you get this idea in your mind, that's intention. Then you write down the details. Okay, I want to travel around the world. I want to have great benefits, great insurance. I want to work with really cool people. I want to have a chance to be creative. And you list all of those individual elements to fortify your dream. The more you get clear on those details, the more your brain begins to work in new ways. Anytime you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind.
Yeah.
Now, the moment you get inspired and you begin to feel what it would be like to live in that future, your body is getting a chemical sampling, an emotional sampling. It's getting a taste of the future.
And that's addictive.
And that should be the new addiction.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you try. There's no wishing. There's no hoping. Hope is a beggar. It has to then open your heart. You have to move into an elevated state. This place, the heart center, is the center of creation. So an example, in our advanced workshops that we do around the world, we start every meditation where people begin to become heart-centered. They place their attention in their heart. They begin to breathe through that center. They begin to radiate that energy of gratitude, of joy. And if they do it enough times, we've measured this, the field around their body is enhanced. They're producing a magnetic field that's connecting them to something greater. When they have that magnetic field now amplified, because this is the center that causes the field around your body to move up to 9 meters wide. The antithesis of that is when you're angry or you're aggressive or you're hating or you're judging or you're fearful, you're drawing from this field and you're turning it into chemistry, and the field around your body shrinks. Now you're more matter and less energy. You're more particle and less wave. You're separate from possibility. You're separate from the field. But when you begin to open that heart and you're amplifying your energy, you're amplifying that magnetic field, then that energy is carrying the thought, carrying the intention. And when you combine that, you are broadcasting a signature into the field. And whatever you broadcast into the field is your experiment with destiny. So then, most people then walk around in their life angry and upset and frustrated and suffering and victimized. Basically, they're broadcasting that signature into the field, and they wonder why their prayers aren't answered. Because in order to do this properly, you have to get up as if your prayers are already answered. So we don't do our meditations and the work that we teach our students how to do this, to pray to have their prayers answered. We teach them how to get up as if their prayers are already answered. Because now the signal has made it into the body. Signal's made it into the field. Mind has changed. The gene has been signaled. And every single day they're knocking on that genetic door. Why? Because a gene makes a protein. And the body has to physically be prepared for the event. Otherwise it can't have it. So once they understand it, then they say, okay, I'm going to teach my body emotionally what it's going to feel like before it occurs. Now, what is the emotion you would feel if you had your dream come true? Pretty excited, joyful, inspired, incredible gratitude. What is gratitude? The emotional signature of gratitude means the event has already occurred. And if you can hold on to that emotional state of gratitude, your body is living in that future in the present moment. And that's when we begin to see the miracles happen.
I love how you say cross that river of change.
Yeah, that's the key. And we crossed the river. I mean, we had a great event here in Munich in August this year. We had 550 people. We made scientific history. I brought my whole team of scientists and researchers, neuroscientists, technicians, and we measured these people in Europe, and they did the uncommon, and they did it really well. And we were measuring changes that you would never see in a clinical setting. Getting people to go from the old self to the new self is literally crossing that river. And if you know that there's another side to the river, and you have the passion, the intensity, and the will to keep going and get beyond your emotions, get beyond your habits of thought, get beyond your unconscious states of mind and body, and you keep moving across that river, sooner or later you are going to break free from the chains of the past. And when you do, you're going to liberate a whole lot of energy. Yeah. And that energy you're going to use to design a new destiny. Yeah. Because once your body is no longer and brain is no longer in the past, it's literally no longer tormented emotionally.
Yeah. I love how from a quantum perspective, like it's already there. That future already exists in that present. There are so many possibilities. There's millions of possibilities coexisting at the same time. And this is already there. So we're kind of tapping not even into a future. It's already one of the options, and we're realigning with that. How do you see it?
Well, I see it a few different ways. The quantum model of reality tells us that all possibilities exist in the present moment. So you have to get to the present moment in order to create. Now, most people, the brain is an anticipation machine. Most people are anticipating the next moment so that they can reaffirm where they're going, and it's safe, right? The more you live by the hormones of stress, the more you're always trying to anticipate the future based on the past. So you can think positively all you want. And if you're programmed to live in the same future because you did the same exact thing for the last 10 years every morning, your body is going to be in a predictable future based on the past. Finding the sweet spot of the generous present moment requires a tremendous amount of awareness. Now, consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention. And we know from the research we've done, studying so many different brains and so many different hearts, thousands and thousands, that when that person reaches that elegant present moment, the moment they do that, they become nobody. They become no one. They become no thing, nowhere, in no time. That's the moment they become pure consciousness. That's the moment they are literally walking through the door into the quantum field. Now, you can't walk through the door into the quantum field as a somebody. You got to walk through the door as a nobody. That means in order for you to heal your body, you got to get beyond your body. You got to forget about your body. In order for you to change some aspect of your personality, you got to get beyond your personality. You have to become no one. In order for you to create something new in your environment, you got to get beyond your association to your environment. In order for you to create something out of nowhere, you have to get to nowhere. And if you want to literally create some new future time, you have to get beyond time. And the moment our students do this, there's this magical thing that we see happen over and over again. It's becoming redundant now. It's becoming a pattern. All of a sudden, the moment they do that, their consciousness begins to merge with that greater consciousness. And all of a sudden, the brain starts to fire in holism. The left side of the brain fires to the right side. It works in synchrony. The back of the brain is talking.
Fireworks!
Front of the brain. It's just like this massive whole brain state. At the same exact time, the heart moves into a state of organization and coherence. And if you look at the map on the computer, and we have the student hooked up to the heart monitor and the brain monitor, we can turn around and look at that person, and they have tears of joy rolling down their face. They are so whole. They are so happy that it's impossible to want in that moment, because how could you want when you're whole? And that's the moment the miracle happens, over and over again.
Yeah. And then it's like something that comes to us, that grabs us, rather than us trying to grab it and force that thing.
Exactly. There's nothing that you have to do, because when you're living in survival, you're living in stress. The emotions of anger and aggression and hatred and judgment and fear and anxiety and guilt and shame, depression, unworthiness, they're all created by those hormones. When you're living by those hormones, you're always going to try to force an outcome, control an outcome. You're always going to try to predict how it's going to happen. You're going to get in your own way. The quantum model of reality actually then creates an energetic field so that instead of you going out there and getting it, and it takes time, you are collapsing time and space, and it is being drawn to you. And we talk about that in our work, the difference between third-dimensional creation and fifth-dimensional creation. Third-dimensional creation takes time. You got to get your body up. You got to go somewhere. If you want a new house, you got to go, look at a bunch of houses, get a loan, pay it off in 30 years.
Work hard at it.
Yeah, you want a new job, you got to go 25 interviews, you get a job, it's not quite the job you want. You want a new relationship, you go on Match.com, you look at 40, 50 different people, you go on all these dates. It takes time. But in fifth-dimensional creation, you're not going anywhere to get it. You are actually drawing it. You are the vortex that's collapsing time and space, and it's your energy that's bringing it to you. Now that then begins to become the excitement, because now you're no longer trying to control or predict the outcome. You're trusting the outcome. You're trusting in the unknown. You would never analyze where it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, because you understand that the moment you do that, you just return back to the old self. The new self would never think that way. Yeah. So the process then of creating from that state of mind and body then means that we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to occur. And that's why it takes us sometimes in our events 4 or 5 days to have students retreat from their lives long enough to forget about their pets and their social security number and their bank accounts and their jobs and their family. They have to get beyond all of those things to be defined now by thought alone. And if you are going to heal your body by thought alone, create something in your life by thought alone, then you have to become thought alone.
Yeah. Then do we just really focus on the happiness, on the love we're feeling, on that gratitude, and then the things that fulfill that come? Or are we really precise? Because you know how there's this whole conversation about being precise, and both seem to work. And it seems at some point like we get precision along the way as we're more feeling that gratitude and that love and that joy.
Well, remember, the elevated emotion is the carrier of the thought.
Right.
So all energy, all frequency carries information. The faster the frequency, the higher the energy, the more elevated the emotion, combined with a clearer intention, is like a laser, because you're creating a more coherent signature. And we know, because we've measured this, that when people have a coherent brain and a coherent heart, something amazing is going to happen in their life. So it's not just feeling the gratitude, because we know that just having an elevated emotion doesn't affect matter. We know that just a clear intention of seeing something change doesn't affect matter. They've done experiments on this. You have to combine then the clear intention with the elevated emotion. The emotion is the energy, the frequency, the carrier of the thought. The thought is the intent, it is the direction, it is the specific field, frequency. So it's like tuning a radio dial. So if it's all about vibration, it's all about energy. When there's a vibrational match between your energy and that potential that exists in the quantum field, when there's a vibrational match, it's going to find you.
Okay. We don't picture actually this particular home or this particular situation. Or I remember your garden was like this super cool dragon. I mean, did the dragon come to you again, or you visualize it? Because it has to be over a certain period of time. So this has to be consistent from what I'm hearing, and you need to feel it. So I just want to get a real...
Okay. So again, the intention is getting clear on what you want. Yeah. So let's say you want a new home. Let's say you want a beautiful garden. Yeah. Well, then start ripping out magazine pictures of gardens that you love. Start drawing pictures. Start seeing it. Start writing down the things that you want. Throw it up somewhere and then add another dream and add another dream. And keep your mind, if you keep your conscious mind on that, your subconscious mind will take you there. Now, I'm not an impatient person, because I know that impatience means I believe that something's not going to happen. But we're here to experience life. We're here to enjoy the magnificence of our creations, and our senses then become the very artist that writes the story in our biology. So then, when you start to see that home and that vision, and you start making the choices for it, and you step into the unknown, and you become the creator, and you do something that's never been done before, and it brings you joy, and it brings you excitement, and it has meaning behind it, then your body is always following your mind. So of course it's going to take time. But it's no different than a garden that you tend in your life. You're always going to be pulling weeds out and always going to be pruning branches, and you're always going to be fertilizing and pulling rocks out. But that's the joy of the creation, because you get to eat the fruit of your own creation. So then our senses should be the last to experience what our mind has created. So the intention then represents all the details. But all the details could be summarized in a symbol, a letter, a picture, one picture, and you know that picture means all of those things because you reviewed all of those things. If you hold the picture, you hold the symbol, you hold the dream house, you hold the dream garden, but you don't say, oh, when this dream garden comes, then I'm going to be happy. You say, the thought I'm having is the experience, and the experience then produces the emotion. And once the emotion begins to occur, now your brain and body are in the future instead of in the past.
We'll go in the second part very soon, more into the brain waves, but just a second on that, like the gamma state is really the optimal brain wave stage, like when we're into that zone, like that's when we really start to manifest it big time, right?
Well, I used to think that, but we have measured enough brains now to know that we have many students that not only are in gamma, and gamma is the super awareness, super consciousness, it's when the experience becomes real, but we're capturing amplitudes of energy that are 100,000 times normal in people's brains. In other words, their brain waves are in delta. The body looks like they're sound asleep, but the energy that's in their brain is so amplified. In other words, normally when your nerve cells fire in your brain, it produces about 10 to 60 microvolts of energy squared. So most people right now, if we measure your brain, it's about 10 to 60 microvolts of energy squared. When these people have these experiences, they're up to 1 million microvolts of energy, 2.5 million microvolts of energy, 4 million microvolts of energy. Now, if you see the brain scan, it looks like this. This is a normal brain scan. You see alpha, beta, theta, gamma. But imagine now grabbing a handful of crayons and going like this. We can't even read the scan. The entire brain is activated. So, yes, gamma is an important state, but now we're measuring things that I don't think science has measured yet, because people are having a full-on sensory experience without their senses. Now imagine if your senses right now were increased by 25%. You could see with more clarity. You could hear better. You could taste better. You could feel better. You could smell better. If you were amplified in your senses 25% more, you would be more conscious. And that's exactly what happens. They're having an inner experience that is so transcendent, it's so greater than any outer past experience, that's the moment. Experience enriches the brain, and experience produces emotion. That's the moment the brain and body are literally moved out of the past in 1 second. And we've seen some pretty miraculous things happen as a result of it. We measured, we saw things in Munich here in August that we've never seen before. And it was off the chart, and we made scientific history again. So gamma's important, but now we're in a whole nother realm that we never expected to be.
Very cool. Let's get to part 2 then, to talk about the healing, how to heal the body, and talk about your own story, and then how we get there. If you haven't read You Are the Placebo, this is it. My delicious co-creators, sending you much love, and see you in part 2. Bye-bye. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.